Good morning, everybody. This is a live extreme weather update as we have a snowstorm that is impacting portions of western Texas, and those winter storm warnings have been expanded off to the east to include northern Louisiana, even far southern Arkansas into western Mississippi, where lesser amounts are definitely possible. But I'm seeing some updates here that maybe the upper level system is coming out just a little bit further north than forecast by some of those 6Z models. So we're going to be going over the conditions that are happening so far this morning. Abilene, Texas, I've seen some conflicting reports. Some storm chasers are showing about 3 inches of snow out there. Others have measured up to 4 inches of snow across the Abilene area. But here you can see this upper level system spinning across the Permian Basin, southern Texas Panhandle, all the way down there near Midland, Odessa. That looks to be where that vortex is centered right now. You can see a bit of a clear slot, dry slot coming in at the mid-levels of the atmosphere into the Texas Hill Country here, West Texas. That's going to shut off the heavier snow, it looks like, for a little bit across Abilene. But out here across the Texas Panhandle, you can see still getting hammered out there. Maybe even up to 9 inches of snow could fall across the southern Texas Panhandle there. That's that upper level system. And you can see why the heaviest snow usually falls near or just to the north of the 500 millibar low track down here in the southern plains. Usually if you have a 500 millibar track right along the Red River, that brings the heaviest snow up into the Oklahoma City area. In this case, you can see the heaviest snow still falling just to the north of that 500 millibar low track. You also have a bit of some warm advection / vorticity advection precipitation, that heavier band that is lifting off to the north through western Texas. But you can see that the winter storm warnings are just to the south of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Right now, official forecasts are showing about an inch or two of snowfall in the Dallas area. But with this upper level system coming out just a little bit further north than forecast, at least that was anticipated by the 6Z model suite, I'm wondering if that could bring some of the heavier winter storm warning criteria snowfall up north into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Right now, it looks like in general, the heaviest snowfall east of the higher terrain across the high plains likely is going to be where this system pivots. You can kind of see how the swath of snow does almost a U shape there. So usually the heaviest snow is right where that pivot happens, that turn from traveling more of an east-southeasterly direction with the upper system and then turning off to the north before weakening and spinning down. Looks like the lesser totals of about 2 to 4 inches are going to be the case there. Texas piney woods through northern Louisiana. Greater totals, though, out here. Some totals could even be greater than 8 inches of snow out there across the western Texas Panhandle. But let's break down some of the radar imagery and show this monster band that's lifting northward through West Texas. Band of heavier snow that has impacted portions of West Texas through morning, dumping potentially up to about 4 inches of snow in the Abilene area. And you can also see that dry slot starting to work into Abilene, starting to shut down those heavier snowfall rates. This is the dry slot right there coming into the I-20 corridor in Abilene. This is a very heavy band of snow, moderate to heavy snow there now, lifting to the north of the Abilene area, as just to the north of that mid-level dry slot. Here you can see that heavy snow being looped. Looks like the northern part of this winter storm warning is getting the heavier snow, and I wonder if that's a consequence of that 500 millibar vorticity maximum coming out just a little bit further north. I'm going to show you that in the model imagery. I think that Dallas-Fort Worth is going to end up getting the heavier snow, so I wouldn't be surprised if this winter storm warning is expanded off to the north to include the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. Based on satellite imagery and some other OBS as well, soundings, upper air OBS, it looks like that upper level system is definitely coming out a little bit further north, and many of the models are showing in the 6Z runs. I'm anxiously waiting the 12Z model runs as well to see if this heavier band of precipitation shifts a little bit north. Of course, Dallas and the urban area here, there's going to be a lot of melting as well. So a lot of that precipitation that falls is likely going to melt on those road surfaces and mainly be more of a grassy surface type of a snowstorm. But if you get some of those heavier snowfall rates, like now are going to be between Waco and Dallas, maybe a little bit further north into Dallas, that could lead to greater impacts and maybe the need for those winter storm warnings to be expanded a little bit further north. They do include the I-20 corridor to the east. Tyler, Longview, Shreveport, those areas through Monroe, Louisiana are definitely going to get hit, especially with this upper level system shifting just a little bit further north. Here you can see some wet snowflakes, so a little bit of moisture accumulating on those dendrites, leading to some very high reflectivities near the Waco area. But let's look at the surface map so we can see exactly what's going on at the ground. But first, I want to show you the position of that upper system based on the 6Z forecast models. This is the 3-kilometer NAM. And as you can see, that upper level system here is centered a little bit further south, kind of near the Pecos Valley. But right now, so far this morning, based on satellite imagery, water vapor imagery, it does look like that vortex is centered a little bit further north, and that can make all the difference for the Dallas-Fort Worth area as to whether a winter storm warning is needed, as to whether some of those impactful snowfall rates will lift north through the DFW Metroplex. But it does look like that upper system is a bit further north based on satellite imagery. As we just saw using the Radar Omega app, you can see that spin in the mid-levels of the atmosphere are a little bit further north than forecast. This is at 12Z, so this is a little bit ago. Looking at 3 hours, see how the upper level system does lift a little bit northeast according to the models. So it's not too far off, but it does look like that vorticity is concentrated a little bit further south according to the 6Z model runs. Looking at satellite, it looks like that compact vort is a little bit further north over the southern Texas Panhandle, just to the north of the Midland-Odessa area, which could easily bring the heavier snowfall into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Here is the progression of that vort through the day today. This is by about noon. Still sliding off to the east-southeast, and then it does that pivot, lifting off to the east-northeast by about midnight tonight. And that means that the heaviest snowfall is going to be right where that pivot happens, right where that upper level system makes that turn from moving more due easterly or east-southeasterly over to a northeasterly direction. But again, this is the 6Z model runs, so I'm very curious to see how the 12Z models are going to change. And it does look like it is a little bit further north, a little bit weaker of an upper level system, but just a little bit further north. This is the new 12Z model guidance for 15Z this morning. Later on this morning, that's about an hour or two from now. So this is the new model runs, and it does show the Vort Max could be centered just a little bit further north. Not as bulbous on the southern end here, but more of a slightly weaker upper level system. But really that spin centered over the southern Texas Panhandle. So it does look like the 12Z 3-kilometer NAM seems to have a better handle on the evolution of this upper level system. Looking really quick at the snow map here on the 3-kilometer NAM, and then we're going to compare this with the 6Z model runs. And we're also going to discuss the difference between these different snow accumulation ratios. Here is the Kuchera ratio. This factors in those situations where the snow to liquid ratio may be less than 10 to 1 or greater than 10 to 1. If you have a more cold air mass, it can squeeze out more of that moisture. That's where you can get those snowfall rates much better than that 10 to 1 type of accumulation. But here's the 12Z NAM. This is the regular NAM coming out here, and it shows some really high totals just to the southwest of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, maybe even exceeding 7 inches there in spots. And it does seem like the NAM is coming in hot with a greater snowfall event here across East Texas to the south of I-20, Shreveport area. I don't know if I buy some of these higher totals. We'll just have to see as the 12Z models are coming out. Let's see if the HRRR agrees. And it does seem like the HRRR, the 12Z HRRR, agrees with this pocket of heavier snowfall to the south of I-20. This may be across the southern Texas piney woods out here to the north of Houston. Some of that accumulating precipitation, that accumulating snowfall reaches even the northern northern suburbs of the Houston area. And it looks like the models, even though on satellite, that spin or that vortex may be coming out a little bit further north than some of the 6Z models are showing, it still has this swath of snow largely to the south of Dallas-Fort Worth, to the west of Dallas. These models here, the 12Z models, are showing up to 6 inches, possibly here over the Abilene area, where 3 to 4 inches of snowfall has already fallen. But this is interesting here, this impactful snowfall across the Texas piney woods to the south of I-20, impacting portions of Louisiana, even Alexandria, getting into the action there as that vortex lifts off to the northeast. Usually the pivot point where the upper level system shifts from moving in an east-southeasterly direction, pivoting off to the northeast. Often these areas get the highest snowfall where that pivot happens. but it looks like these models have the higher snowfall to the east of the pivot. But I think many of these areas are going to be more of a 2 to 4 inch type of a band here across the Texas Piney Woods toward the I-20 corridor there. Let's look at the difference between the 10 to 1 ratios. And look at the 10 to 1 snowfall ratios here by the HRRR, showing much higher snowfall totals. This is assuming a 10 to 1 snow to liquid ratio. But the Kuchera adjusts based on the thermodynamics of the lower troposphere, and it can be more of an accurate measurement of the snowfall totals. You may remember that big time event that impacted Binghamton with nearly 4 feet of snowfall. The Kuchera microphysics here determining the ratios from snow to liquid were more accurate, depicting those closer to 20 to 1 with that snow to liquid ratio. Down here, though, in the southern plains, further south in the country, those ratios are probably going to be less than 10 to 1. You get a little bit more melting. Just really borderline low-level thermodynamics for snowfall with those temperatures very near freezing right now. So really the Kuchera snow to liquid ratios are going to be a more accurate representation of these snow maps. And still, even with that, even with those ratios less than 10 to 1, you still get this stripe of snowfall from the Texas Piney Woods to the north of Houston to the south of I-20, impacting I-20 to the east, Ruston areas out near Monroe, with 2 to 4 inches of snowfall. Maybe a little bit greater, though, over the forested terrain there to the south of I-20. The Piney Woods down there to the south of I-20. And these are new snow maps, so these are the 12Z models that are coming out. This is the pivotalweather.com website. And the 3-kilometer NAM shows the heaviest snowfall right where that pivot happens and just before the pivot, showing a lot more snowfall across the southwestern suburbs of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, down toward the Claiborne area, likely to get a lot more snowfall than downtown Dallas or downtown Fort Worth up there. Fort Worth probably will get more than downtown Dallas. But then you get outside of the city out there near Weatherford, Mineral Wells, quite a bit more snow, 3 to 5 inches, even some pockets here of 6 to 8 possible over the hill country there to the southwest of Dallas-Fort Worth, down toward the Brownwood area. The 3-kilometer NAM seems to be depicting that maximum in snowfall right near the pivot point of that upper level system where it starts to turn off to the northeast. And then you get some good banding out here in the Texas Piney Woods. But the models are in striking agreement between this next band of secondary max of snowfall happening to the north of Houston to the south of I-20, maybe impacting the Shreveport area, but the heaviest snow just to the south of the Shreveport area as these new 12Z models are coming in. But it looked to me upon initial glance of satellite imagery that maybe the upper level system was a bit further north, but it does kind of have that bulbous maximum in vorticity on the southern edge of it. But really the center of the mid-level spin is just a little bit further north out near the Midland, Odessa area, near the I-20 corridor right now. That heaviest snow is going to fall just to the north of that track of the upper level system, which is forecast to dive a little east-southeast. And really that bulbous area of vorticity on the southern end of this vort is key for diving that upper level system southward. Look at the regular NAM coming in hot there with these big-time snowfall totals to the north of Houston. These are likely overdone. You're probably going to have a 2 to 4 inch type of a snowfall here across eastern Texas, across northern Louisiana. Still, though, you don't want to take that conservative forecasting approach always, because sometimes it can be right. Look at that big bomb of a snowstorm up there in the northeast where you had 4 feet of snow in the Binghamton area. Many of those forecast models that were depicting that accurately were being thrown out because they were forecasting such high snowfall totals. It is possible that somebody out here in the East Texas Piney Woods, maybe to the southwest of Dallas-Fort Worth out near Brownwood, I do think that these areas are probably going to be the hardest hit by this snowstorm. And really the key is this concentration of vorticity on the southern edge of this vortmax here. This is the vortmax here along the southern edge. And that's what's causing this snowfall to take that southern track, diving to the south of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Still, those southwestern suburbs of DFW are going to get a lot more than downtown Dallas itself. And it does look like this vort is forecast to consolidate here by later on this afternoon, a little bit further south. So really the southern edge, that vortex along the southern edge of that mid-level spin, consolidates there to the west of Dallas as it still is heading off to a east-southeasterly direction. This right here, late afternoon into the evening, about 3 to 6 p.m., that's when the heaviest snowfall rates are going to be realized here just to the southwest of the Dallas-Fort Worth area as this upper-level system consolidates there to the west of the DFW Metroplex. And it's also the time period where the vorticity advection starts to maximize across East Texas late afternoon through this evening. That's when the heaviest snow is going to move into this area, impacting the I-20 corridor to the east of DFW. But still some decent snowfall forming just ahead of that vort, too, across the higher terrain there to the southwest of Dallas-Fort Worth, even at 6 p.m. tonight as nightfall arrives. And that snow continues across North Texas underneath that upper level system. As the snow advances, the heavier snow advances across central and northern Louisiana there, impacting the I-20 corridor by about 7 to 10 p.m. tonight, including Shreveport through the Monroe areas, down toward Alexandria as well. And many of the models are showing some of the heavier precipitation to fall just to the north of this rain snow line. I think, though, that in this case, with these relatively borderline thermodynamics, I wouldn't be surprised if that heavier band is displaced just a little bit further north, and that'll include the I-20 corridor, Tyler, through the Shreveport area, along I-20, eventually out toward Monroe. I think that that's a superficial inflation of the snowfall totals right there just to the north of that rain snow line and to the north of the Houston area, as often happens with an AM out here. But definitely a big-time snow event here. Memorable snow event across northern Louisiana into western Mississippi, including the Vicksburg area. The beautiful bluffs there along the Mississippi River are going to be incredibly snow-covered. Get those birds in the air to document that snowfall by tomorrow morning. Monday morning there across I-20, northern Louisiana. And then the snow really starts to weaken. That surface low there, weak surface low just off southeastern Louisiana. So this system peaks across the southern plains and across the lower Mississippi River Valley before that upper system lifts off to the northeast and weakens. This would be a peak of that upper system as it's advancing. Peak vorticity advection downstream of this system. Almost a bit of an open wave here too, but there are some closed height contours there with this potent vortex. Becoming more closed with time as you go through this evening and the overnight tonight. And that's going to reduce the vorticity advection downstream of this feature, causing a general weakening of this as it heads off to the east. But this is this active period for winter weather across the southern U.S. that we mentioned that was going to happen and should continue too through the middle part of January. But look at this system kind of getting a bit of a positive tilt too, even though this is a closed upper system. Passing off to the east, you get another one of these kicker systems back behind it. Definitely losing its amplitude, shearing out as it heads east across Dixie Alley. That's why the snow is just not going to be as heavy as this system moves off to the east. Different than the last system that had a much more bulbous, potent vort surging into the southeastern U.S. That's how we got that decent snow here across the southern Appalachians that we just covered across western North Carolina out there, even portions of south central Virginia, north central North Carolina. Another system back behind it that is just not as intense, but we'll have to see. Maybe this one intensifies a bit later as it ejects across the south central United States. But in terms of severe weather, definitely a weak winter severe weather season, as would be expected with La Nina. Probably more of a later start to the severe weather season this spring. Here is the real surface map so far this morning, and it shows that those Surface temperatures are borderline, but sufficient to support snowfall, especially with those heavier snowfall rates, a bit of dynamical cooling, bringing those surface temperatures even just a bit below freezing. You've got some moderate snow within that band, well to the southwest of the DFW Metroplex. It is pretty dry over DFW, 38 over 27, so once that precipitation begins to fall, it should bring those temperatures below freezing, cold enough to support snowfall. And down here near Waco, you can see on that radar, definitely some bright banding being indicated there. Still rain down in the Waco area, but that's going to change over to snow as that cold upper level system gets a little bit closer. Still some moderate to heavy snow too, just to the north of that upper system across the southern Texas Panhandle, where temperatures are colder, down into the upper 20s out there just to the north of that upper system. That's where some of those snowfall totals out near the Caprock could even exceed 8 inches of snow there to the south of Lubbock, to the north of Midland. Still getting some decent heavy snow as we saw on satellite imagery. And here's that bright banding on the Radar Omega app just outside of Waco. That says Waco right now is in the upper 30s with rain falling, but it is in the process of changing over to snow. Some of those snowflakes aloft are getting some water droplets on the snowflakes. It makes them look bigger than they are, more reflective, and that causes some of that bright banding with radar. Definitely all snow, though, further north. Look at that. And it is going to change over to snowfall in the Waco area. Let's look at some of this heavier snowfall in the southern Texas Panhandle just to the north of the upper system. Saw that on the surface map. We could see it on satellite. Just kind of some light to moderate snow. Some bands here associated with the upper system. Out toward Big Sprague, Sweetwater. This little area here, you can see this spin. This is the upper level system that we were looking at, and it does seem like the vorticity is a little bit greater kind of on the southern edge of this vortmax. But really the center of that spin is further north across the southern Texas Panhandle. We still do have some pockets of moderate snow, some bigger flakes out here as well. Another band of snow coming into the Abilene area. So even though you got about 3, maybe 4 inches of snow with that initial band, this is some heavier snow coming in just ahead of that upper level system that's going to be moving in later on this morning through noon and early afternoon. That's going to bring some more snow, a couple inches of additional snowfall across the Abilene area. But beautiful scenes of winter so far this morning across Abilene. Winter weather advisory is still in effect for Dallas-Fort Worth for the metro. But to the southwest of there, many of the models were showing that max out across this area, just to the southwest of Dallas, southwestern suburbs, out near the hill country out here, some of the higher terrain. Many of the models are showing some of that heavier snow. That's going to be where this upper level system pivots to. Dry slot, though, now is temporarily shutting off that snowfall this morning in Abilene, and then eventually that heavier snow associated directly with the upper level system is going to come in later on this afternoon. But that precipitation is knocking on the door here in Dallas, and I still wonder if Dallas is going to overperform for this. The 12Z models are not showing that. They're still showing general 1 to 2 inches across Dallas-Fort Worth, but with greater totals just outside, just to the southwest of Fort Worth, down toward Claiborne and Stephenville. Those areas are going to get hammered. Slightly higher terrain out near Stephenville as well. Comanche. And Brownwood, higher amounts up to 8 to 10 inches possible out there in the hill country, well to the southwest of Dallas-Fort Worth. Brownwood is probably a beautiful place to be this morning with this big-time snowfall happening right now. Please share your photos if you live in the Brownwood area out towards Stephenville to the southwest of Dallas-Fort Worth. Definitely some big-time snow happening there. So now I'm going to look at some of these snow maps. And these are from the 6Z runs using the Kuchera ratios that confirm a little bit less than the 10-to-1 ratios of snow to liquid. And you may notice the difference right off the bat in the 12Z models. is that they seem to have an uptick in the snowfall here across the Texas Piney Woods and across central and northern Louisiana, adding a couple inches to that precipitation. The 6Z models did a pretty good job at forecasting the maximum in snowfall there across the Texas Hill Country to the southwest of Dallas. Some of the models at 12Z are even showing some greater totals, exceeding 8 inches there across the higher terrain, Stephenville down toward Brownwood area to the southwest of Dallas. And with a slightly further north passage of that upper level system, I did see that the 12Z models are showing some greater totals across the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Maybe at least a couple inches of snow, I think, across Dallas-Fort Worth. Definitely seems reasonable. Where winter weather advisories are in effect, those winter storm warnings are just to the southwest of the DFW Metroplex. This is the HRRR. And this is the HRRR with a 10-to-1 ratio, showing drastically inflated snowfall amounts. I think we're going to see less than 10-to-1 ratios of this system. Some of them, though, could have 10-to-1 ratios, especially across the hill country there to the southwest of Dallas-Fort Worth. These are probably going to be more accurate snowfall totals out there. Brownwood, Stephenville area. Maybe some higher totals near the pivot point, too, where that upper system transitions from east-southeast to more of a northeasterly direction. And then it gradually weakens and shears out, and that's why you have a reduction in these snowfall totals further east. Monroe out toward west-central Mississippi. And here are the 3-kilometer NAM forecast totals at 6Z. And definitely the 12Z models are showing an inflation of these totals further east. Maybe a 3 to 5, 3 to 6 inch type snowfall across the Texas Hill Country. And a little further south, it seems like, to the east, interestingly. That could be an inflation of those snowfall totals just north of that rain-snow line as well. Out here in the southern plains, oftentimes you don't get that. The maximum snowfall totals can be a little bit removed from that rain-snow line when you have more marginal low-level thermodynamics for those big snowfall rates. But the 6Z 3-kilometer NAM and the 12Z models do have this banding out here, or these heavier snowfall totals of 8 to 10 inches to the southwest and even due south of Dallas-Fort Worth. Maybe Claiborne down to the north of Waco. Waco still in the upper 30s, but you're about to change over. Also, the 3-kilometer NAM 6Z has this maximum just to the north of that upper level system across the high plains of Texas, where temperatures now are in the upper 20s. Most of that snow has already fallen. So if you're out there to the north of Midland, definitely some beautiful totals there to the south of Lubbock as well. Lamesa area. So that's what we're looking at with this winter weather situation. I was going to chase this winter storm in Louisiana, but I'm waiting on a new tire for Dominator 4 that comes in tomorrow morning. I've got the donut tire on right now. I could have gone out there and rented it, but I figured I'll break this down through weather briefings instead. And again, at Waco, you're about to change over with snow. This up here is all snowfall to the north of Waco. This is changing over. You're starting to get those snowflakes starting to show up there with some bright banding, kind of a hybrid between snow and rain out there, leading those snowflakes to be more reflective and bigger than they really are. But this is also showing that it is beginning to change over across Waco. See that precipitation moving in here to the southwestern sides of Dallas, Fort Worth Metroplex today. Looks like snowflakes are starting to reach the ground to the southwest, just to the southwest of Fort Worth. Probably some Virga coming down with that 37 over 27 type of a profile. The dew points need to rise. The temperatures need to fall. A process called wet bulbing. And then as those temperatures settle in near freezing, the snow will start to fly. Isolated pockets near 3 inches now in the winter weather advisory, including Dallas, Fort Worth. And it does seem like the 12Z models are increasing these totals a little bit over the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Claiborne, though, winter storm warning criteria snow. Isolated amounts greater than 8 inches possible across the higher terrain. the Texas Hill Country to the southwest of DFW, Stephenville down toward the Brownwood area. This heavy initial band is definitely moving in to Dallas. A little too dry over Dallas right now for that precipitation to reach the ground, but as it moistens those low levels and this precipitation moves in, it's going to start falling across Dallas-Fort Worth as well. Tyler, Longview has that snow. Pretty short-lived dry slot across Abilene. The dry slot appears to be filling in right now. Precipitation starting to fall in that dry slot across Abilene. Heavier snow is about to resume later on this morning with that upper level system off to the west. So snow is definitely going to ramp up once again across Abilene. Probably will end up with 4 to 8 inches across the I-20 corridor near Abilene, down toward Brownwood, Stephenville. Look at this dry slot fill in out here as that upper level system is starting to move off to the east-southeast, starting to get some vorticity advection downstream of it, some more lift at the mid-levels of the atmosphere, leading to some heavier precipitation again. Definitely a beautiful snow event here across Texas, North Texas, out toward Abilene. Big slug of snowfall happening here across northwest Texas. Zooming out, you can see all those winter weather alerts, winter weather advisories extending all the way to the Alabama border with this system. Winter storm warnings almost down to the Austin area, down to Round Rock location on I-35. Winter weather advisories, though, do include the Austin area. Could get isolated totals, 1 to 3 inches, maybe 4 inches to the north of Austin. Waco is probably going to get half a foot from this snow event, especially the higher terrain just to the northwest of Waco out there. Definitely some higher totals as well. So that is a breakdown of this snowstorm across North Texas, eventually across northern Louisiana into central Mississippi here. Winter storm warning includes the Vicksburg area. Two to 4 inches of snow with locally higher amounts possible. It's always kind of a way to help save the ass. Again, some of those 12Z models are showing some higher totals to the south of I-20, to the south of Shreveport. Wouldn't be surprised if that happens, if those higher totals are kind of like this. That's where the models are showing them. 4 to 6 inches, even some higher totals possible in there. But definitely an exciting event, unusual event here for the deep south to watch this play out. Thank you guys for tuning into my weather reports this morning. I'm going to be launching Storm Chase EDU content coming soon here. Next week, maybe the week after, but I'm going to promote it, and that's available to all Facebook supporters once I get started on that. Still working on this rocket paper as well. I'm going to be working on that during the day today. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in this Sunday morning. Hope you guys enjoy watching football later on today. There in Texas, perfect football weather with that snow coming down. Thank you, everybody. Never stop chasing.